So I have the honor of moderating this panel on movement building, and I just want to acknowledge something that's happened, even to just set this up. So Sam Myers did all of the work to set this up. So what he's done, yeah, he set this up, and do you see him on stage? No. So, when we talk about movement building, when we talk about elevating different voices, I think that this is just a really great, discrete example of allyship. So, thanks, Sam. I have a lot of male friends who have been feeling a little bit attacked in the last couple of years, and one of them contacted me on Facebook, and he said, I just don't know what to do. And so this is the exact kind of thing, to use privilege to elevate other voices. So I live in the subarctic. I've lived there for about 10 years. I'm an emergency physician. I serve a majority Indigenous population. Some of our elders are here. Are they in the room right now? Esha and Rasi? Yes, they're over here. So I arrived yesterday to find that some of my favorite people, some of the wisest people from the north are here, and they have been incredibly important to me in planetary health. We're melting in the north. It's about 2.5 degrees Celsius warmer than it was in the 1950s where I live, and where Rassi's from, it's about 3 degrees Celsius warmer. And so when I started getting worried about it initially, I'd go to the Canadian Medical Association General Counsel and be like, we're melting, and they were like, you nuts. Like, climate change is not a priority for us. And I'd go home and I'd be like, maybe I'm on the wrong track. And then I'd sit beside an elder like Francois Paulette, and he would say, keep going. And I would. And so much of what we've talked about today in terms of Indigenous experiences and Indigenous wisdom, I have found it so humbling to, in the context of a really colonial area, to have had so much generosity and so much support given to me. And so I think that I'm really happy that we have an Indigenous voice on the panel, and we'll look forward to hearing from you. So Bill McKibben will eventually join in, but he will be a couple minutes, I'm told. So we'll start with some of our panels. So we are at an incredible moment in human history. We've heard about a lot of the problems, and yet we know that we have the solutions we need at about the right prices to assure a good outcome for humanity. And so now it's just a matter of generating the social and political will to get it done. And although I know we all feel like we're just sort of scrabbling through, there are incredible leaders in this community. And now we have to figure out, okay, well, what are we going to do? And we have the 1.5 degrees Celsius report that came out last year. We have Greta Thunberg bringing incredible energy into the space. And we know that 2020 is the year where we have to submit our new contributions to the Paris climate change report, or the Paris climate change process. And so when you look at the arc of the next 18 months, this is when we bring it. This is when we go as fast as we can for a discrete period of time, and we jump up. It's a power move type of situation. And so that means we need new structures, we need new stories, and we need new techniques. So we're going to be learning from some of our best young change makers here. And then we'll give them each a chance to give a couple of minutes, and then we'll, I'm not sure if we have a roaming mic that we can use. Oh, Bill's on audio. Is he going to be on video too? Unfortunately, no. Okay, would he like to start now while his video is working, or while his audio is working? We understand his internet's not so good. Yeah.
Can you hear me there?
Yes, we can.
Well, I'm very sorry to be appearing as the voice of God here, and I'm extraordinarily grateful to you all for letting me join in from a distance this way. It's obviously not ideal. On the other hand, this is, one of those times when, in a sense, the medium is the message. We've got to start learning how to do this, how to communicate without getting on planes and crossing the country and everything else. So I'm extraordinarily grateful to everybody, including Kathy, and I'm sorry only not to get to meet you all in person. This is an extraordinary panel. And I will just also say that this is an extraordinary moment. I wrote the first book about climate change 30 years ago. This September, this week, it came out. And at the time, we were, issuing kind of warnings for what would happen in the future. And now we're issuing bulletins daily about what's, about the latest and worst flood or windstorm or firestorm or famine or drought. We're already deep deep, deep into the climate crisis and getting deeper all the time. And that's why it is so good that we're simultaneously seeing the rising up of a powerful movement. Some of us have been working for a decade or more to build that movement. To see it now fully coming to fruition is remarkable. And let me just say, if I have any one useful message at all to get across, it's that the biggest day of climate action in the planet's history will be Friday, September 20th. Excuse me. When people will be going on climate strike around the planet. And I hope everyone will figure out how to join in.
I'm gonna jump in here, Bill, to give you a hand. So I'll tell this story, Bill. So, you know, my hairdresser has really wise things written on her wall. And what it says is, it doesn't matter so much what you do in your life, but it's what you inspire others to do. And so the man that we're listening to right now has done so much to inspire incredible amounts of people. Bill, you were pretty key to me getting involved. I was a new mom. I had a 7-month-old. The terrifying new math of global warming paper came out. I think it was in 2012. And I remember finishing it curled up in the fetal position around my 7-month-old. And that was, I mean, I was crying, Bill. I wasn't coughing, but it was upsetting. And that was the start of, I think many of us have a moment where the diagnosis of climate change really lands with us. And that was the moment it landed for me. And it was about 6 weeks later that I walked up the hill into central big town Yellowknife to bring my first motion forward at the Canadian Medical Association. And I wouldn't have done that had I not read that article, Bill. So basically, my journey was started by something that you wrote. So I want to say thank you.
Well, that makes me incredibly happy to hear, and I'm sorry to be having a coughing fit. I would just like to say that one of the most remarkable places I've ever been in my journey is up to Yellowknife. And getting to talk and meet with a lot of the people who were heading the Indigenous organizing around pipelines and things like that up there was an absolutely crucial part of my growth in this movement. The good news is we're able now to connect in ways that we've never connected before, to put pressure on in ways we never have before, and it's beginning to tell. You could see last night in that CNN climate town hall that our political leaders, at least some of them, are starting to get the magnitude, the scale of the crisis we face. We don't know whether we've done it in time or not, but we know that if we have a chance, it lies precisely in figuring out how to work together, and fast and hard.
So, Bill, I have 2 particular questions for you, just given your experience. Number one, something I think we don't talk enough about is the courage it takes to do this work. Like, I've spent a lot of, sleepless nights the day before, something that was scary. And I want to know where you get your courage from.
Well, I think for me, the most important thing, when I get despairing, which happens often, because I know too much about climate science, one of the things I tend to do is go look at the archive of pictures from 350.org. We think we've organized about 20,000 demonstrations around the world in every country except North Korea. And one of the things that's powerful for me is looking at those images and realizing that most of the people that I work with, most of my colleagues around the world, are poor, black, brown, Asian, young, indigenous, because that's what most of the world is made up of. And most of those people have done almost nothing to cause the crisis that we're in. The great majority of emissions come from about 10% of people on this planet. So if those people who didn't cause the problem are willing to get up every morning and fight, then it seems to me the rest of us who did cause the problem should be able to do that too. And so when I get in a kind of despairing mood, that's where I go. And some of those stories and some of those people are just, so amazing. And it's odd. I think I feel more courage around these things when I'm actually, I don't know quite how to say this. Sometimes the place where I feel most at peace and most not desperate and despairing has oddly been when I've ended up in jail from time to time doing civil disobedience.
Sort of meditative?
There was that you were doing that you were in a kind of the place where one needed to be right at that moment.
That makes sense. I spent some time this summer reviewing some of the psychology literature, and there is evidence that, and it's developing evidence base, but that joining together with other like-minded humans feels good. It starts to provide the web of resilience that we need to keep ourselves going, and that if there's wins involved in that, it really adds to a feeling of empowerment and a feeling of a bit of control over the climate crisis. So I feel like what you're describing is this concept a little bit that action feels better than anxiety, and I've certainly felt that myself. Well, thank you so much, Bill, for your contributions, and hopefully you'll stay on the line as we have our other panelists tell us some of their learnings.
I will. I want to listen. And I'm just so grateful to people for bearing with me. And I'm just so grateful to everybody there who's engaged in this work already. Look, this is the great existential issue of our time, maybe of all time. And it really is. For people who've been keeping their powder dry, now is the moment to be engaged in this fight in whatever way you can think of.
Yeah, it's time to jump, isn't it? It's time for us to find our courage. So let's turn to our panel of extremely courageous young women. So Emanuela Shinta is an Indigenous Dayak person from Kalimantan in Indonesia. She's an incredible storyteller, multi-talented. She's a filmmaker, she's a writer. She has trained many other Indigenous people to tell the story of the Dayak people on the world stage and has certainly toured the world doing that herself. So we would like to invite her now to tell her story to us.
Adil Katalino bacuramin kasaruga basengat kajubata. Arus, arus, arus. My name is Emanuela Shinta. I'm coming from Borneo, Kalimantan Island, which is the part of Borneo that belong to Indonesia. And before I started my presentations, I would like to acknowledge the first people of this land. Thank you for accepting us here. And I would like to acknowledge my ancestors as well, my Dayak brothers and sisters. Because of their blessings, I can stand here in front of amazing people, like-minded people that I know will fight together for this planet. If I start my presentations with this mask, will it look nice? Hi. You cannot see my smile. You cannot see how excited I am to meet you all here. And I don't want to wear the mask, but what if I wear this mask? What if I do the whole sections with this mask? Doesn't look great? Yes or no? Not at all. Yes, of course. Me too. I don't want also to hide my face behind the mask because I want you to remember today you see the face of a Dayak woman that have traveled from Borneo such a long way to come here to share you about what really matters when we talk about the protections of the forest, when we talk about the nature, when we talk about being the guardians of the forest and guardians of this planet. So, my slide is on. This is what's happening in my homeland. This picture was taken in 2015, where the air pollution was equivalent to smoking the cigarettes, 672 cigarettes in a day. And it's 10 to 20 times higher than the level of hazardous. And for your information, we have been breathing in such poisonous air not only for 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years, but 22 years till today. And while I'm speaking in front of all of you now, in Kalimantan, my brothers and my sisters are fighting the fires that are happening around them. And my elders and our children have been suffocated because of the smoke inhalations. So what's really happening there? That's my question as well. And if you ask me about my story, I will say I come up from the ashes. I come up from the lowest point. And what made me take this action seriously with all of my energy, it's because of my anger and pain. Next. So, this picture also taken in 2015 when the carbon emissions that being released because of the forest fires in Borneo, specifically in central Kalimantan, has exceeded the whole carbon emissions being released by US in the same period. You can find it in some journals that being released in that year. But, as I mentioned, we are the guardians of the forest. My ancestors, Dayak people, we are the guardians of the forest. And if you ask me now, what do I have to do? I will say, this is my homeland, this is my family, and I have to act now to protect it. That's why we started with our campaign, which is called Youth Act Campaign. And this is only one picture of how the ordinary young people, they have no skills, they have no trainings being a firefighters, but they refuse to stay and do nothing. They put all of their energy, their time to protect their own people, their family, and our beloved homeland, our beautiful forests, which become the part of our identity. And just very short, this is the Youth Act Campaign. I will go just very, very short. You can just click till the sentences appear. We launched the Youth Act Campaign in 2016 as the response to the forest fires and haze that already happened since 1997. And this is actually a very complex story and not an easy story for me to tell. It's not a beautiful story that I have to smile whenever I talk about this, but I would say we are at the front line and we are spreading this issue, we are spreading this act, being firefighters, providing the haze protections, doing haze relief, providing haze shelters, where our haze shelter is the only one in Indonesia. It's only in Kalimantan, built by my community, Youth Act Campaign, and also to spread the news to all people in the world so they may know in Borneo this is happening and the act is urgently needed now. So I will just end this presentation with one short video. Next. Just next, just go. We haven't given up. This is a video from my community and my people. Our message for you.
I'm brave. I'm motivated. I'm strong. I'm determined. There will be a day we may lose, but not today. Today, we fight!
We are Indigenous. We are the guardians of the forest. For us, forest is more than resources. That's a part of our identity. Our ancestors told us God only created this earth once. That's a gift and we have to keep it. I got a lot of fish. Where is the best place to start? Here. When is the best time to act? Now. This is our role. What is your role?
What is your role? Let's walk together. Thank you.
I love how you used emotion in that to move us. You know, we spend so much time often doing research and, producing these white papers, and we're like, now that's the thing, let's act. And people are like, you just gave me a white paper. And I like the way Marshall Gans frames this as there's a challenge to the head and a challenge to the heart and a challenge to the hands. And so the head, I think we're pretty good at. And so what I learned from you is some of what I can add in terms of moving people from the heart, because really it's emotions that move us to actually take action. So thank you for creating that sense of power and urgency for us. So now we're going to have Sandy Naranjo. So there's a really incredible movement called Mothers Out Front that's actually headed up by Sam's wife, Kelsey Worth. And it really speaks to me as a mom, because a lot of what I do is certainly fueled both for concerns for my patients, but also concerns for my kids. And so Sandy Naranjo is the California leader for the Mothers Out Front movement. She's done work in labor organizing. She has training in all sorts of economics and other aspects of the work. And I'd really like you to tell us how you're mobilizing these moms into really concrete action.
Greetings, everyone. I'm sorry, I might have a little bit of a cold, and I'm going to blame Bill McKibben for giving that to me. So, greetings, everyone. My name is Sandy Naranjo. I am the California Organizing Manager for Mothers Out Front. And I got involved in the whole social justice movement because my whole family comes from labor. So we're all union activists, organizing workers to have rights at the workplace and getting collective bargaining agreements. But the reason why I landed in the climate and environmental justice movement is because when I was 3 years old, I was rushed to the emergency room. And I remember screaming and crying and trying to find my mom, and all I could see is our face of doctors. And then I passed out. When I woke up, the doctors had notified my parents that I was diagnosed with severe asthma. 30 years later, after my diagnosis, children that are growing up in my neighborhood that I grew up are still being diagnosed with severe asthma at high rates. It is no accident. It is systemic. It comes from the poor land use planning. It comes from the failures of the Transportation Planning Agency that refuses to put in visions of mass equity transit. The Calovirus Screen 3.0 is a tool developed by the California Environmental Protection Agency, which measures cumulative impacts. So it has multiple sources of pollution where you can see neighborhoods that are overburdened with multiple sources of pollution. And to no surprise, you will see that those communities that I just mentioned, where children are being diagnosed with severe asthma, and by the way, that's just statistics from the emergency room, not being diagnosed with their physician at the clinic. So that number may be higher. That those communities are red in the map. Also, too, the American Lung Association had gave our city an F for having the worst air. So, why are those the least responsible for the climate crisis paying with their lives? And that's where moms come in. Moms have had enough, and they are getting involved to demand not just answers, but to create solutions. For a long time, energy and environmental policy was dominated, and still is, by men, and we want to create a space for moms with children and grandmoms and caregivers to be involved in the solution. And what does that mean? That means not just understanding the technical aspects of environmental and energy policy, which is important, but also highlighting community intelligence, seeing what the community says, how we can improve our neighborhoods so our children can have a livable planet. And not just our children, but our children's children. So what we've been up to in California, which is very exciting, is that in San Diego, we have launched an electric school bus campaign. We are committed to transition all of the school buses in the San Diego region from going to diesel into electric. In San Jose, we have moms that are implementing their climate action plan and engaging with all the communities to be involved. And what does that mean for me as an individual to be part of the solution with the city? And also, too, in the capital region, we are mobilizing moms, Indigenous moms, Latinas, to be involved and to demand Governor Gavin Newsom to pivot away from fossil fuels. The success that we have had in California. So as moms, we got together, we did postcards, we lobbied our legislators to get Governor Brown, our previous governor before Gavin Newsom, to sign SB 100, which is a commitment to have 100% renewable energy away from fossil fuel electricity by 2045, which was signed by law. And also, too, in San Diego, we have worked with San Diego 350 on putting pressure on Congresswoman Susan Davis, who refused to co-sponsor the Green New Deal, and after sending her postcards and demanding that as a gift for Mother's Day, please give us a livable planet. And within a couple months, she co-sponsored the Green New Deal. So in the fall, what you can expect, moms out in California, we are doing a back-to-school campaign, and Bill McKibben mentioned September 20th, the climate strike. So we are involved. We have children that are taking risks, walking out of school. We have moms supporting the children. So we're doing many activities around the state. You can sign up, which action you want to see online. And also, too, coming up in the fall, we have this upcoming event called Dia de los Muertos. It's a Mexican celebration, really celebrating those that have passed away. But we want to highlight those that have died from climate disasters, and that will be a way to pressure, because we're going to still pressure Governor Gavin Newsom to stay away from fossil fuels. So we will be there on Dia de los Muertos, commemorating those that who have unfortunately have lost their lives, and to get Gavin to move quickly to stop fossil fuel production in the state of California. Thank you.
What I love about moms is this love-powered ferocity. You know, like you don't get in the way of that. Do you want to get in the way of that? No. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who's driven by like the ferocity of one's children. You know that one day the penny's going to drop for them and you're going to have to meet the eyes of the person you love the most in the world. And you're like, I'm a little bit scared, but I'm a lot more scared of you. So I'm going to go do this thing. So that is great. Thanks so much for sharing that with, we felt your energy there. So we're going to move from moms now to the youth movement that they're supporting. So we have Zoe Sina Sklar here. She's a representative of the Sunrise Movement who have been really key to the Green New Deal and supporting it. So come tell us how the youth are mobilizing.
Hi, everyone. It's such an honor to be here and such an honor to share a stage with these amazing ladies. I'm so inspired by Mothers Out Front and had the joy of working with you all and with 350, and I'm so in awe of the work that you're doing, Emanuela, with the Youth Act campaign. This is such a historic, existential moment in our planet and in our survival, and it needs all of us. So it's beautiful to see this room full of you all as well who are doing such cutting-edge research and advocacy for a livable future. So again, my name is Zoe Sina Sklar, and I'm here with Sunrise Movement. We're a movement of young people that is working to stop the climate crisis and create millions of jobs in the process. And we're doing this by changing the institutions that govern our world. We're working to make climate change really an urgent political priority. We're working to end the corrupting influence of fossil fuel CEOs on our politics and on the whole world. And we're working to elect leaders who are going to stand up for the health and well-being of all people. And it's no exaggeration to say that my future and our planet's future depends on this broader work. So Sunrise as a group came into being just a couple years back. It was formed by a group of 12 youth from across the climate movement who looked around at this crisis we're living in and saw that as young people, we were not doing enough to defend our futures. So we came together to build people power and build political power. So working to get young people who are often disengaged out on the streets taking action, and also to get our politicians to actually work with us and not work with polluters. So if you've heard of us, it's probably because in fall 2018, we sat in at Speaker Nancy Pelosi's office, and we stood with Representative Ocasio-Cortez in calling for a Green New Deal. So the Green New Deal is really the only plan that's been created in the US that's looking at climate change as an interlocking crisis of the environmental crisis, but also a crisis of economic inequality and systemic racism. So it's envisioning and building a world in which all people have access to clean air, clean water, a livable future, and building a plan to transition the United States, which has such a huge historic responsibility for this crisis, off of fossil fuels into 100% renewable energy in the coming decade. So I personally come to this work not by way of the United States, but by way of my time I spent in Ecuador. So I was always aware, I read the terrifying new math of climate change and was terrified by it and felt this sense of paralysis. I wanted to make a difference, but didn't know what that could look like, what that could be. And then I went to Ecuador, and while I was there, I was working with a group called Acción Ecológica that is working to protect the rainforest in that region. And when I was there, I got to see the impacts of fossil fuels and of climate change firsthand. I got to go into the Amazon and see pits of oil in the pristine rainforest, got to see oil spills that were happening every single week, and got to speak to people whose livelihoods and whose survival was being threatened by this pollution. And so I saw this and felt this heaviness in a new way. It wasn't just numbers, it was people's lives, it was all of our lives. And then I also had the flip side of this experience of being a part of a movement. While I was there, there was a group of young people called Yasunidos that was working to protect this chunk of rainforest called Yasuni National Park from oil drilling. It's one of the most biodiverse places in the whole world and is also home to Indigenous peoples who have stewarded the land, including people who are living in isolation from the outside world. So we were fighting to protect this place, and we were coming together, and I had the experience and the exhilaration of seeing the change that a small number of people can make. We were out on the streets, and we were talking to people on the streets and asking them to sign in support of a national vote on oil drilling. And people cared, and we got over 700,000 people to sign on in a country that has a population of only about 6 million. So we really were changing the conversation, and I had that joy and that feeling of what people power looked like. And then the government shut it down. They said it was all invalid. They said that we were trying to undermine their lives, and that we could not do this, even though we had the signatures we needed. And I came back to the United States and felt this heaviness and felt this sense that the world was burning and that we weren't doing enough, and that I was sitting in this place, as we're all sitting now, where we have this unique responsibility and this unique ability to make a change. So in the past few years, I've been doing some policy work, was doing advocacy work related to the Amazon, and I also got involved with Sunrise at the local level. We have a chapter here in the Bay Area for people who are local, and I started the group with a couple others, and now we have hundreds of young people who are taking action, who are going to the streets in support of a Green New Deal, and it's been so beautiful to see. I think we have so much knowledge in this room around the world of this moment we're living in, and so often people just don't know how to act, and we've been fighting against everything for so long, and that's so painful, and it's important, and we need that fire because our planet is burning the floods are happening. It's here. And there's also something so beautiful and so hopeful about the vision of a Green New Deal and the feeling of fighting for something. So in my work now, I'm partnering with other organizations and other individuals to build the collective power we'll need to win a Green New Deal. So I hope that I'll get to work with many of you in this room, people here, to build that world. Thank you.
So I think it's so interesting how we're seeing how the cycle of inspiration is really a positive feedback cycle. Bill has inspired, several of us, been totally key. Bill has told us that it's the young people and people in other places that inspire him to keep going. I know my work, and it sounds like your work, have been really influenced by Indigenous people teaching us. And hopefully we can do a better job and better job at being allies to our Indigenous people, because really they have been leading the way in both, work and courage for so long, and now in teaching us really how to look at this home that we all have and how to make it safe for humanity. I feel like we're at a stage where, as an Emerge doc, you get a really sick person who comes into your trauma room, and there's this stage where everyone's like, oh man, that person looks sick, and the level of anxiety in the room is high. And then what I've noticed is that the minute you say the diagnosis and you say what you're gonna do and everybody gets a job, the patient's still sick, but the level of anxiety in the room goes way down. And we are really right now, I think, at that moment. We've said the diagnosis, we're in a climate crisis, and we're watching teams form, and we're watching plans being made daily. And once we have those plans, we're gonna notice that our anxiety level is gonna go right down. And as we get those wins that we're already starting to see, that circle of inspiration will keep going round and round. So it is an incredible time for us all to be alive. I mean, if this was a movie, this is like the best plot line ever. There are aliens up there who are like, oh my God, I wonder how this is gonna turn out. So if you're waiting for the soundtrack, the inspirational soundtrack to start, it's starting right now. We're in this room together. This is the enterprise of our lives, and I'm so excited for all the work I know we're all gonna do together from now on, and have already done. Thanks. Bill, do you have any reactions to the panel? Will people think of questions?
Yes. I want to say this. I was just sitting here thinking that this was my favorite panel I'd been on in the longest time. Made me feel really happy, partly because it's so well moderated, and partly because people are just there ready to go to work, and that's what we need. It's the fact that young people right now are in the forefront of this movement is absolutely what should be happening, because like, I'm going to be dead before the climate crisis hits its absolute zenith. In fact, given my cough today, it may be sooner rather than later. But young people are going to be in the absolute prime of their careers, so it makes great sense for them to be leading here. But everyone else has to follow, and has to follow with everything we can bring. Young people after the last big climate strike in the spring said, time for adults to join us. And boy, is it ever. We're on the brink of being the first generations to leave the planet in much worse shape than we found it, which is about the worst indictment you could ever give to anyone. That's why this all ages climate strike on September 20th is going to be so key. And it's why getting everybody together behind a Green New Deal is so key. And it's why, and here I'll just take the chance on being a rude guest for a second, it's why it's so important that our elite institutions play their part too. Stanford remains heavily invested in oil and gas stocks and things. It hasn't joined a divestment movement that's now reached about $11 trillion worth of endowments and portfolios. I'm really grateful to the students who kept pushing there. That would be another great way to keep this effort moving forward.
Yeah, divestment is a really good way to get wins, isn't it? To get some of these wins that then inspire other wins. We've certainly seen that with the British Medical Association divesting, and then the Canadian Medical Association voting to divest its reserves, and then the American Medical Association. So it's sort of iterative, and it grows and grows and grows. I'm wondering if anybody in the audience has any questions for the panelists. I have lots of questions if you guys don't. Hey, look, it's a Josh.
Thank you very much. This has
go next.
been wonderful. My name is Alicia Graves from UC Berkeley. My question is for the woman in orange. Sorry.
Sandy.
Mothers out front, Sandy. I'm also a mother. I am also very concerned about the condition we're leaving the earth in for our children. But I know that my husband is too, and I know fathers are too. And I wonder if, and men still tend to be more in more positions of power. And I wonder if the same language and the same approach of appealing to our care and love for our children has been tried out on men in any way at scale, and if so, how's that going?
Thank you for your question. So we actually do have some partners. So we do have moms in New York, and their husbands are part of the team and their community team, because it's a whole family affair. And so our organization is Forefront Mothers. That's why we're Mothers Out Front, because there wasn't really a space for moms to come out and be involved in the climate movement. And even though there's a lot of great organizations, but we wanted this to be really centered on moms. But that doesn't exclude fathers or, or supporting husbands or partners to be involved. And so I know for sure my husband is very involved in supporting me and my team on this. And so, and that's what we want to show, that the solution to the climate crisis is, when we talk about justice, it talks about having a situation where the family can have a healthy built environment, and we're all part together.
Awesome, thanks so much. I think Josh had a question.
This question's for Zoe and maybe for Bill. So first of all, I'm in awe of the Sunrise Movement. I've been working on climate change for almost 30 years, and it's just amazing to see you guys come along, and you've changed the terms of debate. You've created a conversation where there hasn't been one, and you're moving things forward. And so more power to you. And we're all there supporting you, and we're with you, those of us who've been working on this issue, and you're helping build a movement. So thank you for that. My question is this. In the Green New Deal, and also at least in the discourse I've seen from Sunrise, health hasn't really been part of it. And yet so many of us in this room, the work we're doing on climate change in some ways is to reframe the conversation, reframe the debate as a health issue, because our understanding of it is that that is going to help move broader and broader cross-sections of many societies to take action. And so the question is, how can we begin to merge what we're doing with what you're doing? And and I guess this is also partly for Bill, it's like the Green New Deal kind of missed the boat on this. How do we figure out how to make amends around that and build it in? Thank you.
It's a great question. And health is so critical for sure, and really appreciate the ways in which you all do the work of uplifting that. I personally believe and know that climate change is a health crisis, and as a movement, we have our set of messaging, and we also really want people from all walks of life, and particularly from spaces of health and spaces of looking at environmental health in particular, to be uplifting that and making that part of a Green New Deal. The resolution that was put out by Representative Ocasio-Cortez is a framework and a vision for where we will get, which is a world where everyone has clean air and clean water and can breathe, right? And that's about health. And we very much welcome the fleshing that out, and I think there's a lot of important work to be done to look at the health impacts of climate change, and also how is a Green New Deal going to build healthy communities? That's a really big question, and one that should be alive for all of us.
Sure, we have another couple of questions here.
Hi, I wanted to ask Manuela, what's your position or opinion about Djokovic's proposal to move the capital of Indonesia to Kalimantan?
Yeah, that's very tough actually.
Jokowi already decided to move the capital of Indonesia into East Kalimantan. I'm from the central part of Kalimantan. But what I would say, it's like a 50-50 actually. It's like a gambling, because it can be an advantage for the local communities. On the other side, it can be also a disaster, because we have a lot of this environmental destruction, like massive environmental destruction there. And the problem is the indigenous communities, the original people of the land, Dayak communities, are not put into the positions where they can give the voices for all this policy making made by central government. And I think that's the main problem, because if we want to know how to manage the land, ask the indigenous community. If we want to know how to preserve the forest, ask the indigenous communities, because they have been doing that for thousands of years. But I will honestly say our presidents now still do not see that, because in Indonesia, the word indigenous also is not recognized yet. So you ask me personally, I don't like that plan actually. But I just want to say some very short statement regarding into the situations in Borneo, in Kalimantan in particular, because Borneo is the third biggest island in the world, and it has a lot of biodiversity, and it has one of the ancient rainforests, more than 140 million years old. So it's very essential to protect this land of the world. And one of the cause of the forest fires that happens for 22 years in Borneo is because of the clearing the land, because the wrong managements of the land from the previous governments. So it's also because of the clearing of the land for the palm oil plantations. And Jokowi supported palm oil plantations. So that's our main problem. And when I say, what is your role? So I would like to ask or urge everyone here to mind your palm oil consumption in your makeup, in your food, in your chocolate, or all these things. Please mind, because there is a lot of sufferings behind the products that you consume. And the third one, just last statement, I would say, anger and pain is the ones that compelled me to start. But love and compassion is the ones that sustain me to keep going. So we have to love each other and really see what we want to protect. Our family, our home, our forest, we love them. That's why we gather here, and we need to take action now. Thank you.
Well, that's a last word from the panel for me. I don't think we could possibly finish it off better than that. So let's start because of anger, continue because of love, and support one another as we continue. It's going to be hard, it's going to be exciting, and we're going to learn a whole heck of a lot. Thanks.